Okay, thank you,
Welcome,
Chair.
Prof.
Can you
Ah,
hear me? Hello, am
yes, we
I
can hear you
all
very
right?
clearly. Please come
Okay,
in.
all right. Thank you very much for the introduction, Chair. And yeah, in the interest of time, I will not go through all the uh, uh, pages, or rather the whole text that I had prepared. I'll just cut it by two-thirds so that we catch up on time and then maintain the key message that I had prepared. So without much ado, program director, distinguished scholars, spiritual leaders in the house, esteemed participants, um, I'm honored to address this gathering or this symposium on a subject that speaks not only to the soul of Africa, but also to the future of humanity. As we have learned from yesterday, a number of presentations that were shared yesterday, we learned that African spirituality has been misunderstood or marginalized. Yet throughout history, spirituality has been powerful driver of innovation and civilization. That is African spirituality. And in Africa, particularly, spiritual traditions were not merely systems of ritual, they were actually systems of knowledge that shaped how communities understood nature, society, health, and humanity's place in the cosmos. That's what we learned from yesterday. We also picked out from the presentations shared yesterday that the pyramids of Kemet, the astronomical knowledge of the Dogon people, the mathematical dimensions of Yoruba Ifa systems, and the indigenous medicinal practices all demonstrate that African spiritual traditions contained intellectual foundations that contributed to innovation long before the modern age. So my key point this morning is that moving forward from that background, as learned from yesterday's presentations, as we navigate the fourth industrial revolution, we must ask whether African spirituality can still contribute to the future of innovation. I believe it can. While technologies such as artificial intelligence, biotechnology, and digital systems are transforming the world, they have also raised concerns about inequality, environmental degradation, cultural erosion, and mental distress. African spirituality therefore offers important ethical and philosophical resources to address these challenges. Its emphasis on interconnectedness between humanity and nature, the living and the ancestors, the present and the future generations remain highly relevant to sustainable development, climate justice, mental wellness, and ethical innovation. Indigenous knowledge systems, including environmental and healing traditions, can therefore contribute to meaningfully to contemporary solutions in sustainability as well as holistic health. The future, therefore, cannot simply involve importing technology to Africa. It must also involve integrating African knowledge systems into the global innovation. We therefore must move from being consumers of knowledge to becoming creators whose innovations are informed by our own histories and philosophies. Finally, the fourth industrial revolution should not become another era in which Africa is technologically present but spiritually absent. Instead, it should be an opportunity to reclaim African spirituality as a source of creativity, ethical guidance, sustainability, as well as innovation. African spirituality is not merely about the past. It should be also about the future. It should offer insights that can help ensure technological progress, to ensure that technological progress remains connected to humanity, community, and nature. I thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Prof, for that very concise but straight to the point presentation on what Africa can contribute to our technology. Are there any questions or any comments?
He gives him a protocol for how to respond. He says, "Speak, your servant is listening."
Okay, so how does that apply?
Brother Christian, you okay. Can you please go Tihalel'Yah, please? Please, I hope I said that correctly. Please ask your question. Yes.
Can you say it correctly? Shalom, everyone. I'm greatly humbled. I managed to log in finally, and I'm greatly humbled and highly appreciative to find such a platform with such great minds. My concern all along has been that it seems like we have shifted away from our focus on which we should be focused on embracing and preserving the African spirituality, but it seems like we have been focused on now belonging to foreign system and not preserving and embracing our identity. But now being part of this symposium, I don't want to lie. I don't know how to express the joy in me to find such that our people are coming together to define African spirituality for what it is, because we have lost focus. It seems like previously we've been focused on belonging and just going with, but we need to focus on who we are. And African spirituality, most of all, it should be the problems to the current problems that we are facing, so that an African child can find themselves and understand where they are going wrong, so that our ancestors, our Yah, can come and heal us. And we need to understand the value of peace so amongst us. And it's gonna take a lot of teachings. The more we become more vocal and we start, I was saying to a friend of mine yesterday that there are so many podcasts on so many other topics. We need a lot of podcasts that focuses on what is African spirituality and what is its role and how do we become spiritually revived, and why does it sound like African spirituality is not there to solve our problem, whereas in the ancient days it was their main core focus. It was to heal us emotionally, physically, and otherwise. So I'm greatly humbled to be part of this engagement. Much appreciation to the speakers who've been there. That day, I'm pleased to see you. I'm humbled. Much appreciation.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. We are happy to have you in the space as well. Thank you so much. Any more questions? Can we move on to the next presenter? Hold on. There's been shifts in the program, so I'm going to just move a few things around and send it to you as well. But I do have the next speaker. Can Brother Freeman Nampong Nandang, is he in the room? Brother Freeman Nampong Nandang. His paper is
there is no freedom. There is no freedom in the room.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up Brother Siphiwe Balega, if you don't mind, if you're in the room with your paper.
He is in the room.
Okay, can you please do your presentation on the Pan-African Spiritual Imperative, Reclaiming Indwelling Divinity for Civilization Renewal in the Age of AI. And then after that, we will have the African Hidden Voices presentation. I will send through the program as we speak so that you know what time you're on. Brother Spirit Balega, please come in.
Yeah, greetings. Can you give me 1 minute? I have to go in another room. I'll be right back. Just 1 minute.
Okay, not a problem. Okay.
So Chair,
Yes.
whilst we wait for Brother Siphiwe to start,
Yes.
in terms of your outfit in Durban University, that's correct, yeah?
Yes, Durban
Yeah.
University.
So, what would you say in terms of decoloniality?
Mhm.
Would you say that above all else you want to achieve? Thank you.
This is a very interesting question.
That's why I said above all else. I'm sure you have a lot of
Yes.
things that
Yes.
I want to do.
Above all else, I would love for us to achieve comfortably, wholly, using our knowledge where necessary, to move in that space, and that this knowledge actually builds who we are as Africans. It transfers into our societies. I would actually like it to bring the walls down, the walls that separate the societies or the communities and the learned. There's that wall where it seems that only us from internal space, the internal builders, the gilded cages that we are in, we go out into those communities, into our communities. I don't even want to say those communities, that's distancing myself from them, into our communities to get knowledge, to come and sound clever, as far as I understand. But we actually don't bring people. I would like a time when we can bring people from the communities with the knowledge in the way in which they know how, with their own educational system, to come into the spaces and be able to teach our students, and us as well, as staff, as lecturers, as whatever we are. Those walls need to come down. Physical structure, the implied, intangible structure that's existing already. So that's that's what I'd ultimately love to see. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yes, it does. And since Brother Sifu is still not here, a follow-up question. So in your partnership with ACIP, ACIPS, ACIPS, some say ACIPS, what above all else are you also aiming to achieve in that partnership?
You see, ACIPS and us. I think that I'm just going to say this in the most, in a way, emotional way, but ACIPS is a very interesting organization. I would love to help, and I would love them to help me, first of all, because I'm growing spiritually. So with the people that I am engaging with, I need internal growth for on a personal level, and guidance as well. I know there are people who have been on that journey longer than me in the space. Um, eh, and then hopefully that makes a better me, so I can transfer this knowledge outside of ACIPS. And but I would like this partnership. It's not just a partnership for duty for me. It's a personal partnership as well with them. We are growing together. It's new. We have meetings every Sunday. It's a family. It's like there's a lot of drama and good things and laughs and all of that. And I think just that in itself is something that I would and it's honest, and it's that I would like to see move into larger spaces. There's just that spirit. All I know to call it is Ubuntu in practice, in a way. I don't know if that makes sense to you.
Oh, thank you very much. I think Brother Siphiwe is ready, Chair.
Yes, okay. There we go.
Okay, I'm just adjusting my screen here. Can you hear me?
Yes, you are on.
All right, fantastic. Nsumba, greetings. Abene, thank you. Abene binhamne youle. Thank you, wise ancestors of the past. I just spoke my mother tongue, Balanta, which after 8 generations of ethnocide, I am in the process of reclaiming, relearning, while I live in my ancestral homeland after a long prophetic captivity. I am honored and excited to be here to make this presentation, to be amongst colleagues who have a deep interest in this subject that I also have. And I also note that I'm happy to see my brother and comrade Paliani, who made it known to me that it was this conference that has reunited us after 20 years. We first began reasoning and engaged each other while we were trotting Rastafari. And maybe later on, he and I will be able to talk a little bit about that journey. Okay, my presentation is towards ACIPS-AFRIKA, the Pan-African spiritual imperative. I will define what ACIPS-AFRIKA is a little bit later. The foundation and context of this presentation is the central paradox. Africa produced the greatest civilization on earth, right? Ancient Egypt or Kemet, yet faces the deepest challenges today. The question is how did we fall from such heights, and how do we recover? Now, the historical foundation, we're going to talk about the golden age of ancient Egypt's spiritual achievement. We have Kemet, the first, oldest, greatest civilization known to mankind. We have a spiritual system centered on realizing the indwelling divinity in mankind. And I would add its relationship to the vital life force energy that is present in every object, both living and non-living. That spiritual achievement had created the first iteration of Homo spiritualis. And this was done through an institution known as the mystery schools at An. Today in the Greek, if you read the Bible, it's referred to as An or Heliopolis. The architectural and astronomical proof are the Giza pyramid complex itself, which I am estimating around 10,500 before the Common Era. Okay. Some of its characteristics, as I'm sure everybody knows, right? It's perfect alignment with the Leo constellation and the Orion belt. And this demonstrates access to divine intelligence. Now, the core spiritual teaching during this golden age was man, know thyself. It was inscribed at the temple of Luxor. At that time, our ancestors knew and taught that we had 2 natures. We had a divine nature that is rooted in the 11 laws of spirit, or Ma'at, which encompasses truth, balance, order. And we had an animal nature, represented by the animal parts of our brain, the reptilian part of our brain, and then we had a human part, which is represented by our mammalian part of the brain. And that this nature is driven by ego, emotion, and sensuality. Success during this golden age of spirituality equaled or meant allowing the indwelling divinity to rule one's life. Now, I am assuming that everybody at this symposium is familiar with the Pawet Neteru, the Kemetic tree of life, the cosmogram of our ancient Anu ancestors' spirituality. At that time, just as we have a physical body and a physical anatomy, and I can ask each and every one of you, name the parts of your physical anatomy, the various organs and systems and functions, and most of you could do it. You could say, oh, I have a respiratory system. It consists of the lungs organs. Its function is to inhale, to take in oxygen and to exhale carbon dioxide. I have a cardiovascular system. Its main organ is the heart, the various blood vessels, arteries. Its job is to take the oxygen and circulate it to the various tissues throughout the body. I have a neurological system. Most of you can name the parts of your physical anatomy, their relation to other parts, and their functions. And because of that, and because of knowledge of that system, you can scientifically, right, improve each of those systems. We know this through, for example, athletic training. I'm a world-class swimmer. Coaches that mastered this anatomy, this system, will say, if you want to reach the highest level, right, become an Olympic swimming champion or track and field champion or wrestler, you have to do these things to improve these systems, and you have to train them to work together in this way in order to enhance physical performance. Well, likewise, our ancestors also were able to, through the indwelling divine intelligence, map out their invisible yet real energetic and spiritual systems. And they labeled the parts. You can see you have the Ak, the Ka, the Ba, the Kat, the Ren, Kaibit, Ab. I'm not going to be able to go into all of those in this presentation. It's just by way of reference. And they also mapped out that there were 11 divine faculties that emanated from before creation. There's nothing that exists, so there's nothing that can disturb the peace, and then emanated through these faculties that we give the names to: Aser, Tahudi, Sekert, Ma'at, Herakuti, Heru, Heteru, Sebek, Alset, and Geb. We all need to master these things. I'll come back to this. Let me continue. Well, let me say this. The top triangle here represents the realm of the divine or heaven. This bottom area represents the earthly, the human. So this is the divine realm. This is the human realm, the earthly realm. And in the middle sits this faculty where we get to choose where our, for lack of a better word, focus and intention resides. Are we going to choose to, through these faculties, access the divine realm and let it dominate and rule our behavior? Or are we going to use our lower faculties focused on the personality and our physical sensations and allow that to rule our behavior? It's a choice we make. All right, so this is my own diagram to explain this, okay? At the highest level, we have peace because nothing exists. So if nothing exists, there's nothing to disturb anything. So our fundamental nature is peace. Once that divine energy initiates creation, once there is creation, there is what is called omnipresence, right? There is nothing that the creator created where the creator isn't. The Creator is present in all things, so it's omnipresent. That is one of its fundamental characteristics. From that, we get the second emanation. If the Creator is everywhere at all times and in everything, there's nothing hidden from it. That means it is all-knowing, or what we call omniscience. And from those two, we derive the third characteristic of the divine realm, which is omnipotence. If the Creator is everywhere at all times in everything, nothing is hidden from it, so it knows everything, it is all-powerful, omnipotent, okay? Those are the divine aspects that we as man and woman created in the image of the divine Creator share in. But we are only able to consciously access that when we use our will to, through the divine faculties of number 4, which is truth. Meaning, from omniscience, all is known, is derived what is true, and from that, joy. I won't explain that in detail, just let it stand. Likewise, from omnipotence, all-powerful, comes this faculty, herokuti. It's discipline. Meaning, if you are all-powerful, you have enough power to say no to things that are harmful to you, and to say yes to the things that you need to take responsibility for and do. There is no excuse for not doing what needs to be done. If you are accessing the omniscience of the divine through the faculty of ma'at, truth, given by Tehuti, and you have the power to what? Limit yourself to that which is truth. Okay? This faculty here, our will, it has no energy, no matter, no program. It's free. It has to be no energy, no matter, no program, because if it had those things, it would be limited. And therefore, what it does is compelled by finite components. And then finally, the lower spheres. So 10 is the earth, okay? Sphere 9 and 10 is the physical body. Then you have a personality, you have an intellect, and you have an imagination. If we use our intellect and imagination only to satisfy the needs and desires of our physical body and our personality, we remain in the lower sphere. We are not guided by the divine intelligence. And this is the root cause of all of our problems on earth. So, in answer to that question, how, when we have the golden age of spirituality and the greatest civilization, how is it that we fell into the condition we are in now? In order to answer that from within our own ancient Anu spiritual system, we have to deal with this divine faculty called herokuti. And it deals with protection as an active alignment, not a favor. Divine protection is not a separate deity stepping in to change the physical rules of the world. Protection is the automatic byproduct of a population keeping its collective energy vibratory, unified, and disciplined. If a civilization stops doing the rigorous spiritual work required to maintain that high vibration, the protection vanishes automatically. So here you see, right, protection, active alignment. It's not a deity coming in to do supernatural things to protect us. No. When we are in our indigenous African spirituality and that indwelling divine intelligence is ruling our behavior, we have this protective force field. Okay? This is what our ancestors were doing up until the 3rd dynasty in Kemet. For reasons that I'll explain in a minute, that work weakened and caused cracks in the internal spiritual alignment, right, in our shield. And the law of Herakudi, the divine judgment, automatic, right, meant that our protection vanished. What happened? We had an internal breakdown of Ma'at. The third dynasty kings abandoned the servant of God role and instead sought absolute power through human ambition and greed. They violated the principles of Ma'at, universal balance, and the result was isfet, chaos, injustice. Violence replaced order. Okay? The societal consequences were the following. The old kingdom collapsed through internal revolution. This is before any foreign invaders. The fragmentation, it resulted in fragmentation and weakening of society. The population became vulnerable to invasion and foreign domination, and the psychological vulnerability, right? There was a fear of a second death, and that opened the door to foreign religions. I'll explain that in a moment. Okay? So why did Kemet experience an internal moral and spiritual decline? We need to know the answer to this, because if for some reason, using our traditional African spirituality, we create again this homo spiritualis, this man that is ruled by the divine intelligence. We did that before, and yet something went wrong and it failed. And if we don't study and understand that, we can reproduce that and fall victim to the same thing. What happened was this. There was a shift from spiritual cultivation to externalized ritual. Within the tradition, we call this the Sebek trap. Sebek being the faculty of our intellect. In Kemet's early golden ages, spirituality was an exact science of self-mastery. Initiates underwent decades of training to silence their emotions, tame their animal nature, which was called Set, and awaken their inner Aser, their divine self. Over millennia, the high spiritual standards of the priesthood began to slacken. The spiritual system gradually shifted from a science of inner transformation to a system of externalized ritual, religion, and fortune telling. So much so that, for example, today, you could ask, like, for example, I went to my Balanta community and I asked the young people, why do we sacrifice? Why do we slaughter cows during the Tokorchur, right, which is the funeral ceremonies? And their answer was to show off how wealthy the ancestor was, which is not why that thing started. Yes, that's true. That is what's happening there. But they did not understand that originally, right, the blood carried the vital life force energy. And the ground was the portal into the ancestral realm, because when you die, your body, what? Goes back into the ground. So we live from the ground, and then we return to the ground. So the earth was considered to be the vessel that knows everything and was the portal into the ancestral realm. And so when you slaughter that animal, that blood soaks into the ground. That is a jurisdictional transaction that is taking place between the living earthly realm and the ancestral realm. And because the transitioning ancestor is going into a new community, he has to be presented and, for lack of a better term, pay a rent. And in order to sustain that individual, the more life force energy, the more blood that was soaked into the ground showed how serious his children, his grandchildren, his lineage, how serious they were that this ancestor be received well. This was some of the understanding of why that's practiced, but we had lost that. They were performing the external rituals without understanding the inner meaning of it all and the inner cause and effect mechanism of the ancestral science. The consequence was that instead of cultivating the actual power of the higher spheres, peoples and especially the rulers began relying on the lower intellect, the Sebek, sphere 8, and superficial religious compliance. They thought performing the rituals perfectly was enough, forgetting that true protection requires absolute purity of mind and spirit. Now, I wrote an article that goes into great detail in this particular period and what happened. It's called Understanding the Theban Sorcery Lodges, the false salvation of the soul, and the fall of the Anu at An in ancient Kemet that opened the door to foreign invasion, religion, and imperial domination. So if you want to get a thorough understanding and explanation of how and why this happened at that particular time, you can go there. One of the most consequential aspects was what became spiritual fear. For the individual, this is what the Theban sorcery lodges was falsely teaching and misapplied. That for the individual, the breakdown of Ma'at meant the possibility of a second death in the afterlife. If one's heart was found heavier than the feather of Ma'at during the weighing of the heart ceremony, it would be devoured by the monster Amit, causing the soul to cease to exist entirely. That was a perversion of the original teaching. And here then is where the appeal of a redeemer, a Christ salvation that can assure life in the afterlife, in a heaven, by a simple one-time confession of sin and acceptance of a Savior, in this case, Jesus. There was a spiritual fear that came in by this false teaching, because Ma'at, right, did not teach that your soul would be destroyed. So now with our protective shield cracked, spiritual fear, and the increase of both leadership, priesthood, and people now operating from their lower selves and no longer striving to use their divine faculties to achieve the oneness, the peace, the omniscience, the omnipresence, the omnipotence that they share with the Creator. This is what allowed the Hyksos invasion, the first invasion of foreigners, right? This came from Amorite or Semitic foreign peoples known as the Shashu or the Habiru. They exploited a weakened Egypt after internal strife. They aimed at the extermination of the original Anu people and their replacement. The religious corruption, right? These foreign invaders misunderstood the mystery school teachings that were happening at the temple of Luxor or Waset, called An in the Bible. They mistook the spiritual sun people for literal sun worshippers. And this is where they introduced the foreign Abrahamic religions, while our spiritual shield was down, preaching external salvation. This replaced the internal divine realization with worship of external saviors. Now, quick biblical contradiction for those that are well familiar with the Bible. Genesis introduces a paradox. Genesis 1:26-27 says, God created mankind in his own image. Genesis 2:16-17 and 3:5 commands mankind not to realize their divinity. Do not eat from the tree of knowledge. The problem, why create humans in God's image yet forbid them from realizing it? The evidence of the original teaching still is in the Bible, because it affirms the Egyptian mystery school doctrine. If you go to Psalms 82:6-7, John 10:34-35, Proverbs 23:7, and John 8:32. It says, ye are gods, confirming the divine potential in all humans. Meanwhile, Moses, who is a fictitious character designed to use the Bible as a sacred teaching literature. In that story, Moses is trained at this school of An, the original school teaching the original spirituality, and Joseph marries a daughter of the high priest of An. Okay, these are clues that the Bible lets you know that what I'm saying is true.